I don't think my world is different, any kind of unique.
Well, first of all, tell me your name.
Oh, Ben Wright.
That's right.
Yeah,
Ben.
and I had to.
I'm Greg.
I was like, what's your last name, Greg?
Greg White.
White.
And your last name, R-I-G-H?
W.
W-R-I-T-E?
W-R-I-G-H-T.
G? W-R-I-G-H-T. Awesome. So how'd you get into music?
I went to school in Stephenville, and there was not really anything to do down there except play music and listen to music. And I had always, when I was a little kid, been a big fan of like Willie Nelson and stuff like that. Then I got into like punk rock stuff in high school.
Somebody's at the front door.
I'll take it.
Sorry, guys.
And it,
was.
I just kind of thought, well, this is neat. I'd like to do this, and I never really did anything with it. You know, I learned how to play, and so I started trying to learn cover songs. And I couldn't learn any covers. I get an idea, and I start writing. And so I just wrote. And
So you're just a natural writer.
I just like to write, man. I can play 2 hours of originals, and but I mean, I can play like 3 covers.
Right.
But every time I started, so I just got into that, and you know, it was when the Larry Joe Taylor festival scene was big and growing, and every year I'd have a place to go and play around campfires and all that. And so I tried to do it when I was in my early 20s. You know, get a band, and I couldn't do it. You know, I just wasn't mature enough for it.
So what does music do for you? Why do you write?
So I didn't touch a guitar. I mean, I'd play a guitar like in the living room. I didn't play a gig or anything for like 15 years. And I just didn't want to, because I couldn't separate my demons from my creativity. You know, the two just, they were locked hand in hand.
They belong hand in hand. They really do.
And then I'd loan my guitar to my friend James Nord, who was playing professionally.
James is a very good friend of mine.
Is he really?
Yep.
He's one of my best friends in the world.
Okay, I recorded him and his friend David, who passed away.
Okay.
I recorded that first thing that they did.
Really?
Yeah.
But so James kept my guitar for about 8 years. I had his Larvae, and I'd pick it up every once in a while. No desire to play it all. And one day he brought it back, and it's like it just filled up with songs. This was about 6 months ago. And at the same time, my friend Katsuk and I had reconnected. And so both of them were like, you want to come play a song? And I didn't remember any of my songs.
Right.
But then between 6 months ago and now, I just can't stop writing. That's every
awesome.
night I sit down and I write and I play, and I've got some concept ideas together. And I don't know what I want to do. I don't know how to do anything with it.
So what's your goal with it? I mean, why are you doing this? That's the question.
Because I like to.
Exactly, yeah. And so that's the only reason any of us do music. Because we love it and we want to do it. And it's a release for us. For me, even working on my clients' projects is a release. What's the song about, and how do I bring that more to life for them, you know? And so, it seems like you're a true writer. You're just a real writer. Some people write to make money.
Right.
That's their job, and they're good, and they're gifted at it. They don't write from emotional standpoint. So as far as your song content, what you're writing, where's it coming from? Like where?
The depths of rock bottom and hell.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
So,
that's where we get our best work,
and that's where we find
God.
It's kind of fun, yeah. And so, like, actually, my first, I don't want to. So I've got 3 groups of 6 songs that are very different kinds of groups of songs, and I want to do each one of those individually, just because they all flow together. And the way I've started writing, every song ties in with another song.
Okay, good.
I mean, there's subtle repeating characters, subtle themes, stuff like that.
I love that. That's so creative.
Well, the first ones I want to do, it's 6 songs, and I want to call it Uncanonized, because it's about a spiritual journey that's not really a spiritual journey related to any specific spirit.
I love that.
In the middle.
Yeah.
But then it turns into something. And the way I wrote these together, they weren't intended to be written together. I was like, oh shit, I gotta put this together now.
Yeah.
They go together. I don't think you'd ever realize it unless you really like dug deep or talked to me about it.
Understand.
But every person's gonna get a different feel out of each one of these songs. And even the way I want to record them in a row goes from the basis for what would become rock bottom to absolute rock bottom, and then it ends with you know what, maybe we are going to survive this. And it leads
there's
to
hope.
Yeah, there's hope, but it's dark and it's kind of overwhelming, but I kind of try to put a little bit of poppy sound into it so you don't realize how actually dark it is. And that's where I need somebody to work with to help me develop. You know, like I've heard what you said about arranging songs and which musicians you choose and stuff like that. Like I've got a really great group of guys to play with. And my only thing, I don't care about using studio musicians necessarily, but I want it to be something I could replicate with the guys I have when we get done.
Sure, and that's a matter of musicianship and sitting down and learning the parts if you hire studio guys. So I've had a band in, the whole band came, but they weren't playing on the record, but they sat and they learned, and they talked to the musicians who were the studio guys, and they learned from those guys. And I remember the guitar player going, I'll never be able to learn that part, it's too hard. But 6 months later, he sends me a text. He's like, I got it. I learned it. It made him a better player.
Right.
The difference between studio guys and live guys, not always, but are they're creators. They create things like you're a songwriter. They create parts, and together we all put these things together where we don't have to spend all this time practicing in a rehearsal space. You know, that's why we're here.
It's a really expensive place to practice.
Right, or at home or wherever it is. So there's not all this like, I don't really like that part. Okay, let me work on something. You come back next week. It's like, you know, it's creating together in a space where we're like, hey, try this. Josh, the drummer we use a lot, he's a fantastic drummer, and he's producer minded. So the feel of the song, I'll give him an idea, like let's do single, or let's do 1-3 and on the kick, you know, and in the chorus, and then in the verse let's just do whole notes. But then he takes that information we give him and like turns it into what it is on the record, you know. And so those guys are really good. I don't force anybody to use studio musicians. If you're a band, I definitely want to pursue that. It does take longer, and it's more difficult generally. The problem is usually when we change things
Get people
in the
back
studio. Well, when the band is here, if you're in here with a band, and I'm like, hey, let's try this. And a lot of times that's difficult with bands who are used to playing the same thing all the time. And they're so locked in on what they've been doing, you know, and it's so releasing that and going, okay, let's try this and see how it works. And then can they execute?
Most of what I do is solo or me and another guy. But I've got a great core of guys I can pull from at the time.
Oh, great. Yeah. Wonderful.
And it's kind of like it, but my main thing is I don't want to come in and make something that's just this amazing big sound that sounds different.
And that's up to you.
You know? And I think I got an idea though how to figure out how to, you know, put it together.
Good. Yeah. So one of the things that I do is look at your vision and kind of help you develop that and kind of figure out how do we achieve this, you know, and so I have bands or artists that come in and say, I want to do exactly what I can do live. It's no problem. Okay, this is your band and this is what we do. And then I have people who just want to create. I'm working with a client who wrote, you talked about how all your songs tie together. It's the most complex project I've ever worked on. I didn't even understand it till we got into recording. So when I do a record, we spend a lot of time in pre-production.
Okay.
That means I'm listening to the songs. I want you to record them on a voice memo and shoot them over to me. I'll be listening to them. I'll write charts to them. I'll suggest any changes, like, hey, what if we did this chord here or any of that? So that's the pre-production process that the artist and I work on and make sure everything's laid out properly prior to recording. And then, oh Lord, I lost my train of thought of where I was heading. What was our subject?
We're talking about studio musicians versus the band and making
I was beyond that.
Making it how we can replicate it. And you know, the biggest project you'd work on.
Oh yeah, that's what I was telling you is Bill Coleman's project. So it's so complex that we got into recording after all this time of working on it. So it mirrors a Love Story of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot.
Okay.
It mirrors that poem, which is, I had to read first. It's a humongous body of work. So my client's way more intelligent than I am. And so I'm reading this body of work and going, I don't quite get it. I see this cat here, and you mentioned this cat. But it also, it mirrors his life and his depression. And so sometimes his depression is speaking in the music to him, and sometimes he's speaking to it. And figuring out that complexity of how that goes, and every song flows together. It's one continuous story from beginning to end, which all ends with a soundscape at the end of a guy walking down the road, a cobblestone street, which happened in the poem, and there's 13 things that he sees, and it goes back through the record. And on the left, there's a woman washing dishes in the poem and humming a tune, and it's the first tune on the record, and it goes all the way back through this. And when you listen with headphones, it sounds like you're walking down the street, and it goes back through all the songs. The next one's a guy laying in the gutter, and he's going ah da 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 to the second song, and so on and so forth till it all ends at a bar with a guy on a piano jamming out, and the whole bar singing the last song, which is the saddest song about his death.
That's
so it's
pretty
extremely complex, and he's a genius. There's no doubt about it. So yeah, I've been down that road, and I have heard that you've called this your midlife crisis project.
Yeah, it's just.
So it was his too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mine just came back.
He's a lawyer, but he's so creative. This is his project to give to the world, and
That's why I want to start with these, because this has. I don't want to say these are my best songs. These are a different kind of songs.
Mm-hmm.
The second group I want to do is kind of like a dark old 97s Reckless Kelly, Phil Pritchett kind of party music. And then I've got some, uplifting and insightful kind of fun, Jackson Pollock type painting songs.
Yeah.
But this first one is the one that's like meaningful. It's like, if I don't do anything else after this, I want to get these done and hold them together.
So group 3 is just art for art's sake?
Yeah, man, there's a lot of stories about people and some kind of more superficial fun stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, Jackson Pollock, I really do.
I like, but I just like to think of his stuff. You know how it's got that memorable big pow. Oh, this is
there's no doubt when you're standing in front of one.
Yeah, but these songs like that, they're the ones that you remember, but it's not really the one. They're probably more recognizable, commercially acceptable songs, but I'm not doing it for that reason.
That's not why you're making
I don't want people to know hear that first.
That's really not why anybody should make music, honestly.
People do.
We create art in hopes that it sells, and being authentically ourselves is so important, and it seems like that's what you're doing. That's really cool. Yeah. Those are my favorite people to work with, because it's freedom in that. So a lot of times when we have an artist and they've had a lot of success commercially, and there's a lot of pressure to replicate that success again, it becomes stress and difficult for them, and me. So, like,
I wanted my first run. I want to be. Have you heard the Teatro album by Willie Nelson?
Teatro? I'm not familiar with it, actually. I'm a Willie fan too.
It is the best.
What year do you know?
Probably.
Early, that big of a fan?
Early 2000s.
Okay.
But it's
okay,
you recorded in a place about like this. It looks like, the videos and stuff of it look like it's a very, we're going to bring in a different group, some different guys, and start something different. But I want it to be a lot like that sound wise. The other thing that I wanted to make sure I ask you, I don't know what to do with music once I get done with it.
Right.
I don't know how to do anything with it. In the old days, it was, get $150 and order 20 CDs and sell them and then figure it out. But I know music's totally different.
I'll get to that, but let's go back to the Willie Nelson thing. So
okay.
You mentioned something where you want it to be a vibe of another one. So one of the things that we do in pre-production is I set up a Spotify playlist. I don't know if you're on Spotify, or we can do Apple Music or whatever. I belong to all of them. And we start dropping music in there that inspires us. And sometimes for me, it's more like, I like this snare drum for this song, that sound. And so we start accumulating all of this music that's already out, not to copy that music, but just for vibes and just for inspiration.
It's like a recipe. When you start cooking something, it's like, okay, I'm going to make Thai food today, or I'm going to make barbecue.
Yeah.
Do I want, Southern barbecue, or do I want Texas? You got it. And I started doing that to try to explain, because the guys that play in the band with me, only one of them is really familiar with what I would consider my kind of music.
Okay.
The other are friends or acquaintances that have come together.
What would you call your kind of music?
Grungy Americana.
Oh, okay.
With the full band, I would call it Punctury, because we get loud and hard and fun.
I have a band I'm working with right now that's a little bit that.
Yeah.
Punctury.
But, except for this first one, I'd call kind of a... The songs I'd use for reference are when Robert Earl Keen did Flying Shoes at the Tiny Desk studio. It's an acoustic version of a Townes Van Zandt song. I really like that. sound, and then I've got like 5 or 6 other ones that I found that are similar to that. Just a basic but full sound.
Are you familiar with Todd Snyder?
Yeah.
Adam Carroll?
Yes, Adam.
So Adam, sometimes it's acoustic, sometimes it's a band, sometimes you think it's acoustic, then a band comes in like almost at the end, and it's interesting. So it can be very full, even though it's very acoustic-y.
So Todd Snyder's a great, like Todd Snyder, East Nashville Skyline era.
Yeah. What's this? Coup de grace.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny you say coup de grace. The guy that plays drums with me used to play with coup de grace.
What's his name?
Fish.
Okay, yeah. So Gyro, who managed them and drove them around the tour bus for years. I've actually mixed 2 or 3 of their projects. I mixed their Coup de Grace's Last Hurrah. I mixed that record, which was live from a place over here on the south side. It was their last show that they did, and then they went on that huge long hiatus and then got back together.
Yeah, but they
did their photo shoot here at the studio too, in the phone booth out there.
Really?
I don't know if you saw the phone booth.
I didn't see it. I would have recognized it.
Yeah, they did a lot of rehearsing when they came back, and they're here at the studio.
So he doesn't play. He doesn't play on the road anymore. So he's a good niche for me to, bring him in with my budget and excitement, and him to get gigs every once in a while. And then my bass player is an old guy I played bass with when I was really young, and we just reconnected. I don't know how, but we did.
Yeah.
And then my lead player is a guy that I work with. He's actually one of my suppliers.
Awesome.
But 2 of the 3 of them have been like studio professional touring. Is it so?
And you want to use these guys on your record?
I don't know. I don't know for sure.
To you?
I would really want to use Fish for drums, just because we're real connected. And then the other 2, kind of maybe not. But also I don't know if it's like if you got a studio of 3 or 4 guys that work together really well.
Yeah.
I don't want to separate. So I'm just completely idea phase right now.
Well, and you could do a little bit of both. I can tell you a story about an artist that I work with who, and I don't want to say his name, but it's an artist that I've worked with who his band was so upset, and they're his main band. They're like, we deserve to be on the record. We have done all this. He said, I'll tell you what, on the next record we do, I'll let you have 1 song. And so we discussed it, and it was like, okay, this is what I'll charge for it. They came in and never got released. So, but you've got guys who are a little bit more pro than that. They're great live. They're fantastic. But they're not creators. They're not, so it's hard to say. I mean, it's if you love your guys and these guys like feed me, I would never ever break that up.
Right.
So, but the pros and cons of those things are it costs more generally in time with a band. So, for instance, a band I recently worked with, we spent 3 full days tracking drums, bass, and rhythm guitar on 5 songs. So studio guys are so much faster than that. And so it's less time. But we'll get off that. We've been on that subject for a while. I'm not trying to convince you at all. Just
these are the things that
pros and cons that maybe you don't know.
As a guy that's not as seasoned, and I don't like recording because I'm not a well-trained musician. I don't know. Like if you said use this chord instead of that one, if I have to count 1, 4, 5 on my hand,
Sure.
And I try to do stuff the same.
That's what pre-production
every time. Yeah. But I think working with studio guys would be good because I'm not as tight as I want to be on my own stuff.
I understand. So in pre-production, there's time between that and the recording. So if we do change things, you have time to practice.
Yeah.
And I have some clients who say, I just want to sing. I don't want the stress of that. But I would never take anything away from anybody. You're like, if you want to play the guitar, let's do it. But I'm going to make sure it's right, if I'm producing the project.
Yeah.
So I had another client who wasn't good with a click track. It's just really rough.
That's my nemesis. I can't play their click track.
So we tracked everything, got everything down to kind of rough cuts as far as just the rhythm section. And it was a project where we were only hiring a few studio musicians. I played everything. I played the bass. We programmed like cajon, or we did percussion stuff ourselves. We didn't have it wasn't a full band project. And so we got all that rhythm section. He went home for a month, lived with a click, he even slept with it on, and came back, and lo and behold, he did it. And that was a client that had been to some other places, and they're like, I would never work with you. And so after that project, he got 2 write-ups in the Fort Worth Weekly. So his practice and his hard work is what made that project, and being able to listen and understand that. So you said you don't really know what to do with it afterwards.
No idea. I have no idea how music gets from the studio to people's ears other than play.
And what are we talking about? Are we talking about making some money, or are we talking, and I know that doesn't matter to you, are we wanting to try to recoup some of our investment, or are we wanting just to get it out to everybody?
So
that doesn't matter at all.
Part of my plan to be reasonable with this whole thing is I keep a ledger to break even playing music. So if I hire 3 great guys to play a gig with me, I got to make at least that much money.
Correct.
To pay them. You know, my songwriter shows, that goes to pay off my PA. Even though I could just go.
That's a good business model, y'all.
Yeah. So and I won't. But well, the other part of that is me being in a different place and wanting to do something cool with this. It's like going to the casino. If you go to the casino and you take $20 and you lose $20, you leave. You had a good time, right?
Yeah.
If you go up there and you take $100 and you're like, okay, I got to pay my rent. You leave in the hole and you're broke. It's like I got to make sure this is a reasonable enough project that I can. Otherwise, I might get something weird and crazy and nobody wants to listen.
Then how do we? Well, not even about the music, because I believe you create the music, and Rick Rubin said this: the artists, the fans, the listeners, they don't really know what they want.
Right.
Now, if you're doing. You have different sizes of markets, you know. Pop is huge. Rap's a little smaller. Country's this big. Americana's a tiny dot inside that.
Yeah.
So that's why we see country music going, you know, those directions, because the audience is much larger. But in creating art at our level and what we do, it comes down to, if you want to monetize it and break even or even make money, it comes down to a few things. Connecting with the people that will support you. One of the business models we set up is, and this came from Bob Baker, 100 fans who'll spend $1,000 a year on you. And then how do you do that? So you're not trying to sustain as an artist. You have a career doing something else and making music because you love it. But how do we bring that money in? So people really love handmade things. So I have a client who is doing a pre-release party here this month, and then he has 5 release parties in 5 different states, and he only has to have about 30 people at each place.
Okay.
Some of them are at someone's house, sometimes it's at a venue, sometimes it's all these different places. It might just be in somebody's backyard when they're having a barbecue. So handwritten lyrics and different things like that can support this. So if you had a party celebrating your first release of this, let's say we did it here at the studio, how many people would show up? Could you have 30 people?
Probably, 20 to 50, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then how do you do this without begging for money? You have a silent auction, and it's like, these were guitar strings that were recorded on this record, and how valuable is that to a friend, family, fan, you know, any of those people, and they love those things and want to keep those things. Handwritten lyrics, anything that you can do. Another client of mine collects hats that he finds on the side of the road, and puts the date on them, signs them, and he sells those. I mean,
I've got a whole wall of handwritten lyrics from Mike Graham, Adam Carroll.
Exactly. You collect them.
Rhett Miller. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's, you know, you think about, and I'm talking to a lot of young musicians too that are trying to do this for a living. And one of the things that, you know, as a 49-year-old, more business person than musician is helping these guys look for different avenues of
income streams.
What do I do with my music and how do we make it different other than the bar scene?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so in my opinion, you should make music and then play live to support that music that you've made.
Right.
Most people have it backwards because they go and start playing because it's instant money. But I think that could possibly hurt you in the long run. But it also gives you experience, so it's hard to say. It's a catch-22, and then you can be making money, but one of the big things that happens is people get stuck in what I call cover band land. And so they start playing covers because it pays more money, and they play like mainly covers. They throw in a couple originals, and they never can get out of that. They get stuck in that.
I know exactly.
So, but as far as instantly releasing things, you know, nowadays it's changed a little bit. We have independent distributors. You don't have to go through a gatekeeper anymore like you used to, and so It's wonderful. The good part about that is anybody can release anything they want. The negative part about that is the market's so oversaturated.
It's so saturated.
And there's a lot of stuff out there you have to dig through to find good music. So if I put it on an Americana playlist, it's through Spotify and all of those streaming services, it's a little bit better for me because it follows the algorithm of what I've listened to. But that is a good thing. I don't go to the record store anymore and listen to hours of records to figure out, oh, I like this one, you know. But it's as simple as going to a online distributor, TuneCore, CD Baby, whoever, and releasing. Just signing up, and it's not expensive at all. I don't recall the price at the moment, but I think a single maybe $5 is $25 or something to release that. They assign you what's called ISRC codes that are like a barcode per song, and you can buy these on your own if you're going to be starting a career and doing this over a long period. I would suggest buying your own ISRC codes and having those and assigning those to the music, or they essentially just let you use them. They rent, I guess you could call it rent them to you. So, but it's no charge. It's included in the price of signing up, and they assign those. So there's good things about it. I think it was 100,000 songs a day come out now.
I can't imagine. I mean, it's so much.
I'm going to look this up to make sure because I've quoted this, and it changes so fast. Pre-COVID, it was like 40 something. COVID hit, it was 60 something.
I mean, it used to be hard to put music out, and you know,
there's a gatekeeper. Yeah. You had to be signed to get released.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're selling them out of your trunk.
Which is or do it. We did consignment at record stores, and you'd go back to your record store and can we move this up to the front? Can I put this in the local artist section? Yeah.
120,000 songs.
Well, I have got 7 of them
released every day. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I said I've got 7 I want to put out on one of those days.
And so one of the things we do offer is a post follow-up meeting, depending on what your goals are. How do you get paid for your songwriting? All of these things. How do you release this? Just like what you asked, we help with all those things. People who already know that, we go more into the marketing side.
Okay.
And how do we monetize this, and how do we break even as quick as possible? 120,000 a day.
That's a lot. A lot of songs.
Let me get back to my notes. I was taking on you. So the first group of songs, have you been working on these already? Do you have an experience in a studio already, or?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I've sat down and tried to record some on some click tracks with a friend in GarageBand.
Okay.
And I've been in the studio a really long time ago, but it wasn't anything that I'd compare to being able to do it now.
Yeah. Analog tape days.
Yeah.
Good. I miss those days a little bit because it was such a community effort. So we would be in the studio and we were on a big mixing console. It may have automation where the faders move. You can program them to move just like we do in Pro Tools now. Maybe you can turn on and off a send, but that's it. And so we've got 3 of us in there around the console. It's like, okay, when it gets to the chorus, push these up to where I have tape and they won't go any higher. Then pull them down to where I have this tape when it goes to the verse. And everybody's got 2 hands on it and they're doing these moves and you're recording it down to an external thing. And somebody inevitably misses their cue. It's like, and you just start over, and call the secretary in. We don't have enough hands. Push this button.
Pull this, yeah.
Yeah, and now it's all done. One person. I can program all of that to happen, and so that's kind of a negative part about the business. I don't get to spend time mixing with other people.
It's kind of like taking the dark room out of photography. There's so much more you can do.
Exactly.
With less skill.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. The skill is not. You can't do it with less skill.
The amateurs can get, I know. I don't.
They can get closer,
but not the same.
Right? It's not the same. Now there are people recording great music, but they spend so much time, and I'm of the opinion that we should be the best at what we do. And I've mentioned this before, and so if you want to be a songwriter and you want to pursue that and being an artist, why would you spend all this other time working on all these other things? Pursue that. I mean, that's what I did. I'm not good at conversations outside of this very well. I do this and I study the Bible. And I'm weak at that, but I'm learning, and I love those conversations. And used to be ghost and paranormal, but I used to love to talk about that stuff. But primarily music theory, music arranging, recording. I put my all 100% into that. And so outside of that, I'm pretty useless.
Hey, everybody knows where we belong.
Right. Yeah. So I've always recommend, hey, just go for what you want to do. You know, I hate to see somebody. I hate to see somebody go for, I want to do this. I want to do this in music, and they go to college and they study business. You know, I mean, there's so many ways to make money in the music industry.
Right.
You know. So, and it's all knowledge, and it's all meeting people and working things out. So
when you do the publishing, like with CD Baby or one of those guys, distribution. Does I always hear about stuff like BMI and ASCAP and all that. I don't even know what those are. I used to know what they are, but
performance rights.
Does that tie to that too?
Absolutely. So how you get paid from streaming service, the songwriter and the publishing part of the royalty gets paid through PRO, which is Performance Rights Organization, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC.
Okay.
So if you don't have a publisher in place, that money just goes away. So if you're not signed to a publisher, which you probably wouldn't be, and I wouldn't even recommend it where you're at, you should start your own publishing company.
Okay.
And so that's half of the royalty that's paid out. So you have the publishing side, the writer side, and that all comes to you, which is very small amount. You know?
Yeah, and it's not that it's anything significant, but
it is.
I want to do it the right
television.
way. Yeah.
So what we do is when we mix a project and we're finished with the project, we send it for approval to the artist. They approve the mixes, or they say, I want these changes. We make those changes. Then we make them soundtracks without just the music. And so they can take those and license them to film and television. And then that's how they get paid.
Okay.
Through what's called a sync license. So,
okay.
And so that goes straight to PRO too, Performance Rights Organization, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's lots of different income streams. And then you've got Sound Exchange that pays for internet radio. And so it's important to be set up with all these guys. And it's so much work after the project. And so I've started educating people on that because I've really kind of got tired of seeing clients fail financially.
I think that side's kind of fun. Like when I look for, do I have a place in the music world outside of playing
like that
stuff?
part of it?
Those are the kind of things like you get these guys that are really creative and they just don't have the concept of following the business side of it. It's like maybe I can learn this little bit and that can be a service I provide to these guys that don't do that yet.
Yeah, we do that for free just because I want my clients to be successful, It's a hard. The only problem with it is they just want to make music. I just want to make music. I don't want to run this business. I despise it, actually.
But you have to do that to make music.
And so I wear my creative hat when I'm working behind the console. I don't sit behind the console and work on social media or my books or anything like that. I sit at my desk and work on my laptop because if that's there, I don't want to do this already. And then everything that's not creative related, I make as easy as possible. It's automated or it's just super simple. I think that's a key idea. And I don't recall where I learned that. Atomic Habits or something like that.
Atomic Habits is a great book.
James Clear, The Compound Effect. I can't remember the writer of that.
We got the same algorithm on Amplify or Spotify or whatever it is, but I listen to those two books.
Yeah, so it's a matter of making all of this stuff so easy that it's just you can do it quickly. I don't really want to send emails, and I want to be making music. That's what I want to do. But you have to do those things to do your job. And so with artists, I find that it becomes overwhelming to them. All the work. So I have a release plan that I give to people. It's a 3-month release plan. So you do an album. And then here's this plan, like, okay, what's your website look like? Oh, I don't have one. Okay, before you do anything, you cannot release this unless you have a website. So that it's a step-by-step from beginning to end of what needs to happen if you want to be successful and make money in the music industry, and it's a lot, and so people get overwhelmed. So I'm trying to give people little pieces of it at a time. Just last night, a client that released a song yesterday called and was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't get my Spotify for Artists to link. There's another artist by the name of my name, and my song on Amazon went to his profile, and it's on his profile. What do I do?" And, so walking him through that, like, it takes a couple of weeks to start your profile.
Okay.
And so I think with that, it taught me that I need to educate people a little bit more in some areas. Like, if you're going to release a song and you don't have a Spotify profile, just cut an acoustic song. It has to be good. You don't have to market it or advertise it. Cut something that doesn't cost you a lot of money. Put it out on Spotify. Put it out on all streaming services through your distributor. Get all that set up and ready to go, and then you can start all of these profiles. Apple for Artists, or Apple Music for Artists. I can't remember the name of that one. Spotify for Artists, Amazon for Artists. You can start all these profiles and get your profile set up and looking good before your real release comes out.
Okay.
So there's all these little bitty things, and there's so much to it. People become overwhelmed. So, I think eating the elephant one bite at a time is the ticket.
I agree.
So, yeah, there's a lot. It is overwhelming. So,
but for someone like me, it's not that doing the things are that hard. It's knowing what to do. Like I have, I knew how to go take CDs to Record Town and say, "Can I sell these? I have to sell 100 to come
sure,
across."
Absolutely.
But then when I get on Apple Music, I'm like, I don't know where this.
Well, and I don't subscribe to doing that first if you want to make money, because you're not going to make a whole lot. I don't know what the royalty is. I can't remember. And I know there's legislation going on right now about that, about what people are paid from streaming service. And I do enjoy, I stayed away from streaming for so long because I felt like it was unfair to the artist. But honestly, I like paying $21 a month or whatever to have me and my family able to listen to whatever.
And you can find anything you want at any time.
Yeah, I think I got my wife to fall in love with me because I made her a playlist on Spotify and sent it to her, and on Valentine's Day 1 year ago. So
it works, man.
Yeah, and so it's that's my language I can speak. I'm not a writer, but I'm a co-creator with writing. I'm a good co-writer, and so I couldn't write her a song on my own. I tried once. It didn't come out well. But I can take songs that I've worked on and songs that, Frank Sinatra did and all these things, and they express how I feel to her, So that's the beauty of music, I think.
That is cool.
Well, what are some other questions you have about?
Like how long?
It's so overwhelming. Like there's so much information if you dive deep into it. It's like anything,
Okay, two other questions I have. How, like time and money, like how do I budget for a CD and how long should I plan on it taking and stuff?
So when you say a CD, what do you mean?
I'd say CD because I'm 49 and I think of like my
but even
album, like it's like so sick, like this
6 songs.
6 songs, yeah.
So for using studio guys, I would say probably a week of tracking.
Okay.
We'd have probably 2 days of pre-production.
Okay.
Prior to that, I would want you to record them on a voice memo on your phone, or just however you could record them and send them to me prior to that to let me live with them for a little bit.
Okay.
If you're doing 6 songs, you're a little bit more formed than a lot of people, I think. You have 6 songs that actually go together, and it's important to you, so I would probably just want to hear those 6. But most people who are doing a collection of songs, I asked to hear 7 or 8 or 9 songs, and then we kind of cull it down, because sometimes they have a partially written song that I can help them finish that's just a hit or something, So, you're looking at a week of tracking. As far as getting the project back, it depends on my schedule for mixing. So I don't put a time frame on mixing. Generally, it can be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks before you get it back. So you're looking at a 3-week process to a month process maximum for the whole thing if we're producing a project together. And so then you make revisions, we get those done, then it's time to go to distribution. Of course, you need artwork, and so while I'm mixing, the artist should be working on all their prep work Is your website in order? When are we going to start announcing this project and putting this, getting ready to put it out? And then how quick can Greg get me some snippets to start kind of putting out on social media and letting people hear and all these things, you know? So I recommend a long lead time. Once the project's finished and you're like, yes, I love this, I've sent you everything, you have your masters, I recommend still some time after that before you actually release it, to give yourself time for promotion. So if you're doing a release and you're trying to get write-ups from bloggers or anything like that, trying to get press to talk about it at all, or try to get on Fox 4 News or whatever, that takes a lot of time. And so I recommend a 3-month lead time for an album.
Okay.
You know, is everything in order here? That's month 1. Is our infrastructure in order to take this? Is our store set up? Do we have the album artwork? Is all of this stuff done? And then promotion. I mean, so you think about the Fort Worth Weekly does one write-up a week on a band that's coming on a new project that's coming out. So that's a lot of, think about how many they receive. And so it may take them quite a bit of time to get to it. Once that release date happens, it's old news. So once that date's passed, then you're in review time. Like, hey, will you review this and give this a review? So, and some may say that's not very relevant, but it sure is to Google.
Right.
You know, so everything's digital now. So, and music bloggers who have huge followings, 100,000 followers in your genre, you know, why would you not want to try to hit them up beforehand to give yourself the best success? I hope I answered your question.
You did, yeah.
So, you know, anywhere, it can be as fast as even 2 weeks to do a project of 6 songs. So what I would do, the time frame would be I would want to hear everything first, have a week or so, depending on my schedule. Once again, I may be booked a month, and you send me the stuff, and then I don't have time to listen to it till a week after you send it to me and start writing charts and listening and going through everything. And then once it gets to that point, we have all of everything kind of scheduled out, the pre-production and then the band coming in. Do you need time to practice if you're playing parts on it? From what we've changed, if we've changed anything in pre-production, putting our heads together and coming up with ideas like, what if we did this? What if we did this? That's going to require you to play this. And then the time it takes to practice between then and the actual recording date.
That makes sense.
With studio guys, drums, bass, we could probably track the rhythm tracks in one day, depending on how complex the music is.
Right. That's pretty simple.
So I told you about Bill Coleman's project. It took a week for myself and 2 professional musicians who play together all the time and recorded every studio to track his stuff because it was so complex. That's not normal. Normally we can track 5 songs, drums and bass, and get the rhythm section really tight and really well. That generally 2 or 3 takes, and if we do our homework prior to. And
that's one thing I don't want to, since the studio is not my creative space. You know, it's not like I look forward to going, I want to sit and, you know, it's a necessity to keep doing it.
It's costly, very costly to do that, and some people love that. You know, you look at Steely Dan and creating, and other bands, Pink Floyd, and going into the studio and creating these things and spending that time, but that's extremely expensive.
Yeah. And I want to get it all. And since I don't read music and write music and stuff like that, the way I work is I've got it all written out on giant sticky notes, you know, for me to get my head wrapped around it.
Well, and I can write a chart in a way you can read it and educate you on how to read it, so you can take it home and remember what we've talked about in pre-production.
Okay.
A lot of times I'll record a voice memo. If you can't play the part yet and you're like, I'm going to have to learn that, I can play it and have you sing it, and then I kind of play the part, send you with that voice memo, send you with the chart you can read, and you go home and practice and come back, you know. Okay. So if you know a G, C, and D, you know the names of the chords, and then the other parts on a Nashville number chart are just a matter of educating you on how to do it, you know. And writing it in a form that you can read easier than just a regular chart, you know. That's something we do a lot. If a client, it's complex and there are a lot of changes, and we've agreed on those changes, like, yes, I love that, let's do that, I'll rewrite them a specific chart for them that they can understand. And then the musicians read the other chart. So I think it's extremely important for everybody to be on the same page, literally. If we have the music laid out over here, or sometimes a band comes in and they don't have any of this stuff, and one guy's going, I thought that was an E minor. No, we were playing a C. No, and then another guy's like, nah, it's a C. And it's like, no, it's not. It's a, and see, they should have prepared better.
Yeah.
They would have saved them money, made lots of money on arguments and.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things. I don't want to have to try to be hashing that stuff out in my head before.
We don't do that here if I'm producing,
But like I said, the pre-production, you figure that out.
Exactly. You and I do. I mean, I don't do anything you don't want to do. You're the boss, and so I just want to present you with ideas and present you with creative thoughts about things. And first and foremost, I want to know all the details about why you wrote this song. What's it mean?
Well, and that's one thing that I'm really interested in sharing, because that's going to dictate how we develop.
It makes the song. So, and then how do you let the audience know what that means too? So, one of my clients, Alf Evans, wrote a song called "I Hate the 8th" because his best friend died on the 8th. I think he died on the 8th day of the 8th month, possibly. I can't remember if that's completely true. But knowing that story and helping him develop that song and the sound of that song, it would have been impossible if I didn't know why he wrote the song. And it's a little bit ambiguous of what the song's about. He does talk about his friend in it, but you would really have to kind of know the story. And so then how do you portray that to your friends, family, fans, people who want to support you? You're going to want to make a short video. You can just do it on your iPhone, and maybe even play the song acoustic and talk through it. Tell them, what the song is about, and let them connect with you emotionally, and then that makes the song so much stronger to them.
On my website, one of the things I told the guy I want to put on there's a blog so I can tell the stories behind the songs.
I would do it in video form.
Okay.
Nobody reads anymore.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm talking about. You can put it out on YouTube. You can put it out on Facebook. You can share it with anywhere you possibly can. You can make a card with a QR code on it where people can just scan it and go straight to the video and see, and then if you want to market these songs each individually. We have a lot of examples of those. We did marketing as well as recorded a song called A Brother's Prayer, who was about our client's brother was put in prison, falsely accused. So what does that do to your brain whenever I say that? It's like everybody's falsely accused in prison, right? So in research and writing press releases and trying to figure out how to release this thing, when we led with that, people rejected it. So then it just became a story about a brother's love. And then that was mentioned, but it wasn't falsely accused. I have a brother that's in prison, and this is a prayer for him.
And then they pick up.
They can emotionally connect with it.
They can find the connection in the song.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 people can hear 10 different things come out of a song.
Sure. Yeah. But if you say somebody's in prison falsely accused, everybody goes, yeah, right. So, yeah, trying to figure out a way around that, and because that is truly what he believed and what what the situation was. I mean, I knew the whole story and everything, and so. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and got accused for something he didn't do. But that's hard to convince people of. So then you lead with a better foot. So telling that story in a way people can relate to it. I do remember sending a friend of mine, Jeff Prince, a press release one time and going, "Hey, will you write about this record?" He wrote for the Fort Worth Weekly at the time. And he said... what's the story? Why should I write about this? I was like, it's an awesome record. He's like,
there's lots of awesome records.
Yeah, I'm like, it's his new record coming out. He's like, who doesn't have an awesome record coming out? What's the story, Greg? And so telling that story is so important. It's extremely important to let people know what the story is, even prior to hearing the music. Well, they can hear the music in the background a little bit while you're telling that story on the video. Our technology today, you can click a button and do that,
Well, and I can look into it, see how other people are telling their stories about their songs. And, I hadn't thought about that before, too.
Many people at this level don't tell their story, unfortunately. So I do truly believe fans connect with the artist on an emotional level. Now, you're a musician, I'm a musician. I connect in a different way. I have a different type of brain for that. I get in these deep conversations with a dear friend of mine I've been on the road with. We played together for years. We're always talking about these things. He's a little bit more on the musician side than me. I can fortunately separate my brain and listen as a listener and listen as a musician separately, thankfully. But going to see Randy Rogers way back in the day, you know Randy Rogers, right? The whole band was playing Poor David's Pub before they moved years and years ago. It was my sister, my ex-wife, myself, and Tequila, Randy Rogers Band, and that was it.
That was it.
Nobody else was there. It was just us. And so this is long ago. So my ex-wife fell in love with Randy Rogers. And so always trying to research and figure out why people like people who are not musicians. I like Brady. Brady's the fiddle player. He's awesome. I loved watching him, you know, and Randy's got some good songs. She just fell in love with him. I was like, why do you like Randy Rogers so much? She's like, because he's a bad boy with a heart of gold. Had nothing to do with the music.
You know, I feel like his music is like when you say Randy Rogers, the first time I met Randy Rogers was at Bill's Records and Tapes afternoon. He was playing somewhere. But the first time I really heard Randy Rogers was when we were down in New Braunfels and we were on this bus, and just the sound, the rawness and purity of the sound, you know, pulling you through everywhere. I always feel like Randy Rogers is one of those Journey.
Yeah.
You know, when you get done listening to a song, you feel like you were there. You know, like I just did something. You know, I love that.
Yeah.
That
and
sound.
I'm curious to see how other people would emotionally connect to him. But I do know that when I talk to average listeners who are not musicians, why do you like so-and-so? It's hardly ever really about the music. It's about who they are. Who they perceive them to be. How about that?
Yeah.
So I think Randy Rogers might be a bad boy with a heart of gold.
It might be.
He used to be when he was younger anyway.
He's not now.
So
the other part, how do I budget for recording? I mean, I have no idea.
okay, so if you're going to hire me to record a single, it's generally about $1,650.
Okay.
It depends on what all we're doing, but that would include all the musicians, the pre-production, the mixing, and all of that. And that's this date. Things change, and I've recently gone up a little bit because musicians are more expensive. Everything's a little bit more. To do more songs, I generally discount that a little bit. The more songs you add, you know. And so, it's really dependent. I mean, if you need string sections on every song,
That's good. Yeah, you need horns, you need strings. That's
more, yeah. So, but I mean, if you need strings on one song, live strings, that's okay. You know, we use a musician here who plays 9 instruments, and he's proficient at all of them, and you know, that's not a problem to do strings or dobro or mandolin or any of those things. And so it makes it affordable because he can come in and do them all.
Right.
As opposed to back in the day when I didn't use him, I hired out individual people who all cost a minimum to come in, and it was a lot more expensive.
Right. Even if it's just a small part, it's still they have to come in, set up.
Yeah, and so when we do pre-production, we sit down, and by the time we get to the point where we are in pre-production, I'm going to have a good idea of what I would like to do. And then pre-production tells me, really, that's when we really sit down and come up with what you want to do. And then I ditch those ideas, or I present those ideas, or we go whichever way we want to go. Hey, I want this record to be raw. I want one guitar, one bass, one drum. Okay, let's write some parts that are going to work. Because the Rolling Stones don't even have one guitar, one bass. So, you know what I'm saying? There's multiple things going on there that create interest. Not that it can't be done. I mean, Hendrix did it all the time, and it was interesting, but he was creating the interest, and Noel Redding on the drums, super busy, you know. So,
And that's
Mitch Mitchell on the drums.
there's a lot of this that I've thought about. You know, what do I want in my sound? And the one thing that I keep going back to is I want it to be consistent. My favorite band on earth is the old 97s. And no matter how different their songs are from one to the end, it's that same
correct
sound. They can do so much with that same sound. And so I've always had in my head that I want to do something like that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I listen to these other but I was never really into Townes Van Zandt. I know it's supposed to like Townes Van Zandt.
Yeah, I'm with you. There are some things that make me cry when I hear them of his, but then there's most of it.
Most of it is like,
is it really?
But there was some recently that I just really connected. I was like, okay, I really like this of his, and I see why other people like it. And so I started finding those other sounds in there. It's
I have to apologize to James Nord about that. He loves Townes Van Zandt.
Oh, you know what? Everybody.
Guy Clark.
I love Guy Clark a lot. Guy Clark's one of my favorites. James and I were going to go for his 50th birthday. Adam Carroll did this songwriter retreat thing, and James and I were going to go down there and do that, but I got COVID, so you got to go with other friends.
Yeah.
But even listening to like old Adam Carroll, like the Lloyd Maines produced stuff, he'll have that one song that's got the whole bluegrass section in it, and the next one is just him and a bass and a guitar.
Yep.
It's like I want to find that. Like you're talking about the pre-production, I want to find that consistency through it.
I love how he does. He'll do a song like on a record. You might have 6 songs, and he goes Red Bandana Blues, and he starts a song. He just says what the song is, then he starts.
Right.
And it's not on every song, but it's on a lot of them. And it's like little things like that I find interesting. About him.
He's probably my most influential songwriter in my stuff.
Okay.
I don't want to say I sound like anybody, but there's a lot of stuff that you can tell, especially my older stuff. So like, you used to listen to a lot of Adam Carroll.
During COVID, I watched him and his wife on Facebook religiously, and actually, they won my heart, and I bought from them. And so I bought a vinyl, and he hand wrote a note in there to me, which means a lot to me. I've never met him. I just love his music.
He's great.
And so
my favorites.
I don't fan out too much, but the handwritten note was a huge extra thing that was nice.
Yes, he's got. He's on my handwritten lyric wall. I still haven't put any of it up. I've been collecting it for a couple of years.
That's awesome. To get a consistency in the sound, generally that's you. Now we're not going to go, let's do a hip hop here, and let's program a beat here, and then let's do a Western swing thing here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. That's hurting yourself pretty bad. Unless you're creating art for art's sake, which is great too.
You're writing a soundtrack. There's times to go
sure,
with it,
exactly.
but when you're writing a concept,
and truly, the album I told you about that's very complex. It is a soundtrack, and it's he actually wants to turn it into a musical, and I think he might be working on that now. And it's still not even released yet. I don't. There's a couple of little more changes he wants to make to it before we put it out. And it's so musically in depth and complex, and stylistically, it's everywhere. There's no country on it, but it's a very Todd Rundgren is his favorite artist from back in the day.
Yeah, mine's not going to get anywhere near that complex.
Right? Yeah. So it's a matter of the consistency's you. We're not going to do anything weird outside of that. What my main goal with the project is to never lose the interest of the listener. And so how do we do that? And that's part of what I do as a producer and an arranger is how do we not lose that interest? So I know for me, if I see somebody play acoustic, I could see Todd Snyder, Adam Carroll play acoustic and never get bored. Todd Snyder would talk most of the time, and that's as good as his playing, the stories he tells. But most people, if I just go see somebody average who's playing around town, I get a little bit bored acoustically. So my mind's always like, how do we cure that, And so little changes that happen, they don't have to be big. Like you're halfway through a verse and a shaker comes in. I mean, that subliminally, that's a change, and your brain goes, what's happening? And so it's important to keep these things. And a shaker's not a big deal. It's just a shaker. It's even low in the mix. There's a rule of thumb: if you put the shaker where you think it should be, it's too loud.
If it's loud enough, you go, that's good. So if you shaker, you got
you put it to where you can barely hear it, then you turn it down another dB or two. Is the kind of the rule of thumb. So I can't tell you how many mixes I've listened to, and it's like, oh my gosh, my shaker was so loud. So it's a matter of developing that, and that's what I'm good at, and even the musicians that we work with, they, it takes a lot of experience and talent to know these things and work up over time, like trying to figure out what is it that keeps you interested, And so just a guitar part that has a tremolo on it, just simple, in the background. If the melody's the main thing, the story's so important, we can't get in the way of that. Just this little thing that happens here on the left or on the right or whatever.
And that's, you talk about pre-production and stuff. One of the things that my songs, when I'm thinking about developing them, and when I played with a band a long time ago, we did this organically, but the dynamic of how a song...
Absolutely.
Like Santa Fe sounds like a very repetitive song, but it's a song about a journey. It's a song about a geographical relocation to solve problems that can't be solved by geographical relocations.
Absolutely.
But the point of that song, though, it has to build from a certain sound up, and while you're going through the same thing, it's got a different emotion.
Right.
And then when it comes down to the end, it starts just like it finishes, and it's like, okay, I just went through all this, and all I'm at is a different elevation now.
It brings out the emotion in the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, dynamics are really, really important. Tension and release. And we can create that in many ways. We can create it with volume, how loud it is. We can create it with a part or dissonance in a chord. If you're talking about a serious, hard subject and you add an upper extension into a chord that's a little bit feeling, that's good. That creates that emotion when you're talking about that, So, yeah, it's you kind of just have to put it all together. And we don't do all of this in pre-production generally, because I do like to create in the studio some, but we do it super fast. As far as the basis of this song and the arrangement, that's what we lay out, and then the vibe of each song. What's this song? And then my brain starts going, what are we going to do? And I have 10 ideas for every instrument, and
things I could never imagine, because I just don't even, I hear things that, like, I don't even know what that instrument is on there, but how is that? Like, I've started to notice a lot of I've been listening to some I don't even know who I was listening to, but
don't say the Tejas brothers and you heard accordion.
Yeah. Well, I started listening for accordion because my friend plays with Abel, the Squeezebox Bandit. Yeah, Jeff, my friend, plays lead with them. So I saw them, but then I started listening to these other songs, and so many songs have like just a real subtle rhythm kind of accordion underneath it that just adds depth.
I do that a lot with a melodica.
Okay.
And so the melodica's got a tube, and you breathe into it, and it's got keyboards. You blow into it. It's a little keyboard, and you play the chords while you breathe into it. It sounds a little bit like an accordion. Yeah, just a background floaty thing. I mean, can set a whole mood. So the main thing for me is to figure out what that is first, to be able to help develop that for you.
Right.
And a new project that we're still in pre-production, and probably will be for a while. He's kind of still developing those things before I'm even in on it. So we actually had a session booked. Since he's still developing that, it's like, it's not time for me to be in yet. Let's just save the money, and wait and come in a couple of weeks when you have all this figured out. Because I don't want to take away from him his emotion of the songs. Right. I don't want to develop that for him.
Right.
I want him to present that to me, and then me try to figure out how to make it the best I can possibly make it, where it'll speak to the listener.
That makes sense.
And that's hard to do. It's hard to know, and everybody's so different. If we were all robots and all exactly the same, it'd be easy. Somebody puts out a song and everybody in the world cries, or everybody in the world.
That's what most songs sound like. You come out, you hear a new song released. It sounds like the guy's last song. I know that's why I want to do something different.
Unfortunately, that's so. Depending on what you listen to, that's the machine working. So
right. Well, they know it works too. It's a business.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so that's somebody who is going, well, we did this and it sounded great. We sold a ton of them. Let's do it again.
Let's make it just different enough to keep it interesting. Yeah. I mean, and I know that. I listen, there's a lot of songs I listen to from the old days. I don't really like the songs, but they're familiar. Mm-hmm. And they remind me of feelings and places and stuff like that. Then I hear something that sounds...
But why do they remind you of feelings and places?
Because of the emotion attached to it. Because
why though? Were you there?
Yeah.
So you were there. So absolutely.
That's what I love about streaming is I start thinking about something or playing something. I start feeling like, 1988 Bad Company. Yeah. I can listen to 1988 Bad Company, and that, connects me to where I'm on.
Yeah. So much of my life is a soundtrack from stuff I listen to. Mm-hmm. And I hear these songs and it takes me back, and so we can replicate that. We can make that happen. Not that we're going to take theirs and take you back to that spot. It's not possible.
But it was influence.
But we have our own, and they get used to that, and they listen to that, and then it takes them back to.
And there's plenty of times I'll try to add there's a riff in Red Bandana Blues, and I don't know many riffs, but when I don't know how to connect one thing to the next, I play that. No.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's the same way with there's a lot of Todd Snyder stuff that I have some things that he influenced me on, and I tend to do that same thing. I repeat things I hear in other people's influence. But
absolutely, that's how we learn. So when I first started playing guitar, I sat and watched MTV and learned Poison solos and learned their songs and that's how we start our learning process of how we do it. And then after time, you develop more and more. I think maybe everything's stolen and modified.
Yeah, there's only so many things.
Yeah. I remember playing with Jamie Richards and having to learn these parts that Tommy Dedamore wrote. And man, he came up with some amazing hard parts to play on the guitar. And practice. I was sitting and practicing, and then when I stood up, I couldn't play it because my hand was in a different position, so I had to practice standing up. I'd played country in the past. I'd actually been on the road playing country for a couple of years, and but it wasn't like this. It wasn't like chicken picking, and I'd never really done that a lot. And so I had to really woodshed it and work really hard. I forgot one point.
Just about nothing's new, nothing's right. I mean,
so
got to be
all of those things that I learned from Tommy Dedamore on Jamie's older records. I was able to take and modify, make them my own, and now I play them all the time. But you wouldn't recognize them that they're Tommy's or they're from Jamie's record or anything like that. But it was a stepping stone to creation. So I think mimicking others is good to help with creation. Then once you get to a point, you're able to just kind of create,
Yeah, and I don't think anybody ever really copies. Lots of times you hear people copy. I see this with younger songwriters, and me too. Back in the old days, it's like, well, that really sounded like Pat Green. That really,
we all do it, yeah.
But then eventually, there's a few riffs that I know for a fact. This one, 18 Wheels. I made up a riff in that when I was trying to learn the Ray Wylie Hubbard song, and I couldn't learn that Ray Wylie Hubbard song, and then I got an idea in my head, and it became one of mine.
Good, perfect.
And I don't think he would think I stole anything from him.
I don't know where the saying came from, but good writers borrow, great writers steal. It came from the internet, probably before the internet.
Before the internet.
So yeah, it's all compound, and I think a friend of mine always says there's freedom and discipline. You're disciplined, you sit down and you practice anything in life. The more effort you put into it, when I'm on stage, the more freedom I have to create. So I know this stuff so well, I can play it in my sleep with my eyes closed. Doesn't matter, I don't miss because I'm so disciplined and I practice so hard. Now I can modify, and now I can do different things and have a little bit more fun with it than being so regimented because I know it so well. I see a lot of issues in bands trying to improv too much without having that discipline and knowing that stuff that well, and then you miss. And sometimes you miss when you are disciplined, but missing over and over, or playing a solo that is not interesting. That's the worst for me.
Yeah.
So wanking is one type of guitar solo. You know what it is. And noodling. Those are the two definitions they were probably already given. But I call them those two things. If you're doing one of those two things, it's not good. We need to play a part or a solo, well-developed solo that takes everybody on an emotional journey through that solo.
I know exactly what you're talking about, too.
Yeah, exactly.
3 different guitar players, and one of them, he plays like he's playing the words to the song. He's playing the sounds to the words.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Nobody else can do that.
Yeah, exactly. And generally less is best, simple, depending on the style of music. But, I think that journey is so important. If you noodle, it's like, the listener gets tired and we're on to something else. Or if you wank, it's like,
yeah, what happened to
too much. You can have the best guitar player in the world play a bad solo and have somebody who's mediocre play a fine solo, and it's going to be better.
Yeah.
What are other questions you got?
Man, I think I've asked everyone and like 5 or 6 more that I
good.
I actually wrote down a lot of stuff. before we came out because I was thinking I need to know this, but so much of it, like what to do with it after the songs and how does it work, and this versus that. It's just a new process.
Everything's a Google search away too. So I have a sign on my desk that says I don't know, Google it. And that came from a friend of mine who was a client, and I managed him for a couple of years, who would call and go, "Hey, how do I do this?" I was like, "I don't know, let me Google it." And I would Google it and tell him how to do it, and I'm like, "Wait a minute.
Why didn't you just Google it yourself?" Yeah.
So he would call and go, "Hey, oh wait, I'll Google it," and then hang up. And, if he couldn't figure it out, he'd call me back. So
I got a lot in my head now. I have a good picture about how to do it.
Not overwhelmed.
I'm overwhelmed. I'm always overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Once I'm not overwhelmed, I get bored.
So just a bullet point list of the things that we try to educate is how to release a single to radio and do that yourself without spending a ton on it. How to get music bloggers, how to promote to private playlist on Spotify. So you release your song and there's curated playlists by Spotify or Apple or anybody. I always default to Spotify. And they're either going to pick it up or they won't. And then what do we do then? We have less than 1,000 plays. And so then there's private playlists, people just like you and I, who have started a playlist, like my playlist that I start with one of my clients, Southern Satellite, TJ Broskoff. I started a playlist like what we were talking about, where we add songs to that for the vibe of the record. At the end of the project, TJ was like, "Hey, can you turn that playlist over to me?" And he actually took that playlist of all the songs we had in there and developed it and started just curated it himself and was constantly changing the songs, and it grew. And so he had his songs in there. That's a whole nother business model of starting a playlist of people who sound like you and working that playlist and building it up. Don't put all your songs in there. Put a couple of your songs in there.
Yeah.
Nobody knows you. They know,
Yeah, but 2 years on. Whenever I play covers and I try to do a set list, I try to tie songs like mine into the next one. When I started playing again, I saw a lot of these guys that were great bands and great songwriters, but their sets were so disjointed between one song to the next, and that's how I got the idea of grouping my songs like this, just from messing with my set list.
Yeah.
And then it kind of changed my whole. I did every week for a couple months at one venue to play for 2 hours, and I hadn't played in decades.
Yeah.
And so I really worked on the set list and the flow of songs, and that changed the way that I'm writing.
Definitely. It all ties together. And I'm a subscriber of, if you're playing live, you're in the entertainment business too, so entertain people.
Yeah, make them want to stay for the next one, not...
And everybody does that in different ways. Some people are just all about the music, and their music's good enough to do that. Some people need to put on a show, or both. Their music's awesome, and they put on a show. And, I want to be entertained if I go see somebody.
No, for sure. Yeah, I like taking other people to see... I like introducing people to new musicians. And so many times you see people, and they're great musicians, and they like the song, but the sets just don't work.
Right.
It's like, it's...
Yeah, the set is really important. When we saw Lyle Lovett at Bass Hall, he just is who he is. And he had a cello player sitting right next to him on stage. And they would start having a conversation off microphone. And they're just up there talking so long that the crowd starts snickering, and then he would... I don't know what they were talking about. They'd go, "Oh, we're doing a show. Here we go. Do another song." And it made it great, And I don't know if it was on purpose or if they were just chatting.
We saw him at Majestic, and it was 3.5 hours, and I felt like it was like 10 minutes. No. Like I was already over.
Yeah, he does good. I want to see him and Robert O'Kane together.
That would be pretty cool.
Since Robert retired and came back out again.
And played here Friday. Yeah.
You can't.
I went to his last show.
You can't have a comeback unless you quit.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's mad.
They've all I don't want
nobody wants Robert O'Kane not to play again.
I want to see him again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I'm gonna wrap up and go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have invasive cancer procedures.
Oh man.
All right.
I'd like to know the outcome of that.
You know what? I will let you know. Yeah. I mean, it's just my checkup. I get 43 X-rays. I get my CAT scans. Have some kind of labs I do. It's just
Let me text you my number if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.